The twin suns of Eloria rose with golden fire over the crystalline towers of Vaethra, the capital city of the Elorian Empire. From the high balcony of the royal palace, Princess Aralis gazed out at the sprawling alien landscape. Luminous rivers of blue fire wound through the plains, and great airships hovered like silent guardians above the city. Yet her heart was heavy. Her father, Emperor Xenarth, had summoned suitors from every corner of the galaxy. Princes of warrior clans, heirs of merchant dynasties, generals bearing victory scars, all had come to lay their crowns at her feet. To the Elorian court, this was no simple marriage. It was an alliance that would decide the future of empires. But Aralis had turned them all away. Why? Her father thundered in the grand hall after the 50th rejection. Do you not see that every no you speak weakens our standing? You would cast aside peace itself with your selfish refusals. Aralis bowed her head, yet her voice was calm. Father, I will not marry for power. I will not choose a crown when my heart remains silent. The courtiers whispered. To them, her defiance bordered on treason. But to Aralis, there was no other path. She had seen hollow-eyed queens before, bound to men they did not love. She would not become one of them. So she stayed apart, wandering the palace gardens alone, speaking only to the silver birds that perched on the radiant trees. In her heart, she longed not for titles or treaties but for something she could not name, a connection untouched by ambition. And then fate brought it to her door. It happened on the eve of the Festival of Dawns, when Eloria opened its gates to outsiders in a rare display of welcome. Among the visitors was a delegation from Earth, a young world barely known in the Interstellar courts. They had no grand fleets, no ancient dynasties, no crowns to offer. Only curiosity and courage carried them across the stars. One of them was a man named Kael Donovan. Kael was not a prince, nor a commander. He was a scholar, an engineer by trade, sent to study Elorian energy technology. He had no noble blood, no golden robes. He wore a simple suit of woven black fabric, and his eyes were steady, carrying the sharp clarity of someone who had lived a life of effort rather than privilege. Aralis first noticed him not in the throne room, but in the gardens. She had slipped away during the festival, seeking silence, when she found him kneeling beside one of the radiant trees. He was sketching the luminous roots with quick strokes in a worn notebook. "You are not supposed to pluck the roots," she said gently, startling him. Kael looked up, blinking at the sight of her in her flowing silver gown. "I wasn't plucking, only observing. They're extraordinary." Aralis tilted her head. Most visitors spoke of wealth or power when they came to Eloria. But this human seemed captivated only by the beauty of nature. "You are one of the Terrans," she said. "Yes." Kael Donovan. He stood, bowing awkwardly. "And you are, the princess." Aralis laughed softly. "You sound unsure." "Well," he admitted, "I don't usually talk to royalty. Or anyone with their own personal moon, probably." It was an absurd statement, yet she found herself laughing harder than she had in months. Something in his tone, respectful but not worshipful, was refreshing. Over the following days they met again. First by chance, then by choice. Aralis showed him hidden parts of the palace gardens, and he spoke of Earth's oceans and storms. She asked why he had come so far from home, and he answered simply, "Because knowledge matters more than titles." That struck her deeply. But when her father learned of these meetings, his rage was swift. "A human!" Emperor Xenarth roared, slamming his jeweled staff onto the obsidian floor. "A world barely crawling into the stars. You would tarnish the blood of Eloria with a man who has no crown, no fleet, no claim. Aralis stood firm. He has something greater than crowns. He is honest. He sees me not as a bargaining table, but as a person. The emperor's face darkened. Enough. You will end this folly. At the next gathering, you will accept one of the suitors I name. But Aralis's heart burned with defiance. For the first time, she knew what she had been waiting for. Not a king, not a conqueror. Someone who looked past the crown and saw her soul. The conflict. The suitors gathered once more in the great hall. Dozens of alien rulers stood in gleaming armor, robes of starlight draped across their shoulders. Among them, Kael was an anomaly. Plain, crownless, unadorned. The emperor raised his hand. Daughter, today you will choose. Enough delays. The empire demands a future. All eyes turned to Aralis. She stepped forward, her silver gown shimmering. Her voice carried across the hall. I have chosen. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The princes straightened, certain they were about to claim victory. But Aralis's gaze fell on Kael. Gasps filled the chamber. Some laughed outright. Others shouted in outrage. A human. This is insult, cried a warlord. A child-world boy, spat another. Unworthy. The emperor rose, fury in his eyes. You would betray Eloria for this. This nobody? Kael stood frozen, the weight of galaxies pressing down upon him. But then he stepped forward, his voice steady. With respect, your majesty, I never sought a crown. I never sought her hand. But if she has chosen freely, then let no empire strip her of that freedom. The hall erupted in chaos. The suitors drew their blades. Guards raised their staffs. Seemed blood would be spilled. But Aralis lifted her hand. Silence! Her voice rang with such authority that even the warlords obeyed. She turned to the emperor, her eyes fierce. You taught me that Eloria stands for strength. But strength is not domination, it is choice. Choose him. Not because he is powerful, but because he sees me as more than power. For a long moment, the emperor's expression was unreadable. Then he sank back onto his throne, silent. The court whispered. For the first time in Eloria's history, a princess had rejected every crown and chosen love instead. Ending. The days that followed were uncertain. Some suitors left in rage, vowing vengeance. Others stayed, curious to see what might come of this strange union. Aralis and Kael spent their time not in the throne rooms, but in the gardens, walking beneath the radiant trees. She showed him the hidden caves beneath the palace where glowing crystals sang when touched. He taught her simple earth games like folding paper into birds and letting them glide on the breeze. One evening, as the twin suns set, Kael looked at her with quiet wonder. Why me, Aralis? Why choose me, when you could have had an emperor? She smiled softly, taking his hand. Because they offered crowns. You offered yourself. And I would rather share a life than rule alone. News spread across the stars of the choice the Elorian princess had made. Some mocked it, others feared it, but many admired it. For the first time, alliances formed not from power, but from hope. If a princess could love without crowns, perhaps empires could learn to trust without conquest. The emperor never fully approved, but in time he saw something undeniable. His daughter was happy. And in her joy, the people of Eloria found a strange, new strength. Years later, when the story of Aralis and Kael was told, it was not remembered as the tale of a lost crown, but as the moment an empire changed.